It started like most mistakes do, with too much to drink and not enough clarity. I didn't set out to sleep with the director. I wasn't even sure if he was into men. But there we were, one whiskey too deep, standing under flickering street lamps outside a dive bar that reeked of spilled beer and fading ambition. My shirt was half untucked, his laugh was too loud, and when he brushed my shoulder with the back of his hand, I didn't pull away. I leaned in. God help me, I leaned in. Let me backtrack. My name's Adrian, I'm 28, an actor, or, more accurately, a struggling one. By day, I bartend at a rooftop lounge that charges $18 for a cocktail no one really enjoys. By night, I chase the ghost of a career that never quite arrived, auditioning, rehearsing, putting on roles like second skins that never quite fit. I love the theatre, I hate the industry, but somehow I can't let either go. This play was supposed to be different. It was a small production of an obscure Tennessee Williams script, buried beneath layers of poetic rage and southern humidity. We were staging it in a converted warehouse downtown, the kind with exposed brick, a lingering smell of mildew, and ceilings too high to trap the sound. Our director, Julian Shaw, was a name, not a household one, but close enough to heat up the room when he entered. Late 30s, British, with that infuriating talent of making you feel like you weren't just seen, but studied, like he was flipping through pages of you no one else had bothered to read. I auditioned, mostly to get him to notice me. I'd seen his work on the indie circuit. Moody, brutal, intimate. His style pulled emotion out like teeth, bloody and slow. And when I read for the part of Will, the disillusioned younger brother in Talk to Me Softly, he watched me with an expression I couldn't decode. When I got the role, I told myself it was because I deserved it. Now, 3 weeks into rehearsals, I wasn't so sure. Julian was demanding, bordering on cruel. He didn't shout, but somehow his silences screamed louder. When I delivered a monologue and fell short, he would tilt his head, say nothing, and scribble something down. It was maddening. And addictive. We'd lock eyes during breaks, his stare cool and sharp, like ice under a microscope. I'd catch him watching me smoke outside, his mouth slightly parted. But then, just as quickly, he'd retreat, correcting my blocking, questioning my intention, brushing past me in the hallway without a word. I couldn't tell if he was toying with me, or if I was imagining the whole thing. So, when the cast decided to grab drinks after a particularly grueling night of rehearsal, I didn't expect him to show up. But he did. Wearing a soft grey sweater and dark jeans, looking impossibly relaxed. He didn't drink at first, just stood at the edge of the bar, watching us with that same surgical gaze. When he finally ordered a scotch, I felt the tension shift, like he sat next to me. Close. Closer than was necessary. Our knees brushed. I didn't move. Neither did he. "You did well tonight," he said, voice low, threading between the noise. "Thanks." My throat was dry, didn't feel like it. It didn't need to. He looked at me. Really looked. It's not about how it feels. It's about what it costs. That sentence didn't make sense until weeks later. That night it just sounded profound. We drank more. The rest of the cast started to disappear, one by one, swept away by midnight trains or calls from lovers. Eventually it was just me and Julian. Outside, the air was cool and damp. I lit a cigarette with shaky fingers. He asked for one, and I gave it to him. He didn't smoke it, just held it, turning it between his fingers. "What do you want from this?" he asked, not looking at me. "The play?" "No, all of it. Acting, this life." I laughed. Validation, maybe. A chance to feel like I belong somewhere. He nodded, like that was the answer he expected. Then he looked at me and said, "You already belong. That's the problem." Before I could ask what he meant, he stepped forward, slow and deliberate. There was a moment, a split second, where I could have stepped back, made a joke, ended it. I didn't. He kissed me, firm, hungry. The kind of kiss that collapses every thought into heat and gravity. I kissed him back, almost violently, as if we were both trying to consume something neither of us would admit to wanting. We took a cab to his place. It was small and sparsely decorated, clean but lived in. His books were stacked haphazardly, and his sheets smelled like cedar and gin. We didn't talk. There was no stripping of clothes in slow motion, no candlelit build-up. It was messy, rushed, bodies crashing, hands desperate, mouths colliding. We didn't make love, we used each other, like we were trying to erase something, or remember something else. After, I lay there in the dark, trying to slow my breathing, aware of every inch of space between us. Julian stared at the ceiling. His arm brushed mine, but didn't move to hold me. I wanted to say something, anything, but all I managed was, "So, what happens now?" He didn't answer. He just closed his eyes. And I realized, with a sinking weight in my chest, that whatever this was, it wasn't beginning. It was already the end of something I hadn't even understood. The next morning I woke up alone. His side of the bed was cold. The curtains were half drawn, and a sliver of grey morning light cut across the hardwood floor like a blade. I sat up slowly, head pounding, heart thudding with that awful mix of regret and confusion. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that this was just two adults making a reckless decision, that I was fine. I wasn't. The walk home was excruciating. I felt exposed, like everyone on the street somehow knew, like I had a neon sign over my head that screamed I slept with my director. I couldn't stop replaying the night. Not the sex, not really, but the silence after. The way he didn't touch me once it was over. The way his eyes stayed open, staring at nothing. I wanted it to mean something. I was embarrassed that I wanted it to mean something. When I arrived at rehearsal later that day, no one seemed to notice anything was different. Julian was already in his seat, flipping through his annotated script, expression unreadable. He didn't even glance at me. For 2 hours, we blocked scene 4. He gave me notes like nothing had happened, cold, clinical. I started to sweat under the lights, my voice cracking in places it never had before. Every time he stood behind me to adjust my position, I could feel the echo of his hands from the night before, and it made my skin crawl in this strange, guilty way. At one point, I stumbled over a line. He didn't flinch. "Again," he said. I repeated it. "Again." I looked at him. His jaw was tight, but there was something in his eyes, shame, maybe, or resentment. I couldn't tell if he was punishing me or himself. The rest of the cast picked up on the tension, though no one said anything. They just kept their distance, laughing a little less during breaks, avoiding eye contact with either of us. Theatre people aren't subtle, but they're skilled in pretending. I thought it would get better, that if I just stayed professional, we'd move past it. But that night opened a crack in me, and in him, that refused to close. The next week was a series of emotional landmines. Some days he was overly nice, asking if I needed water, complimenting small moments in rehearsal. Other days, he was ruthless, questioning my commitment, interrupting my scenes, dismissing my choices like I was an amateur. It was like I had become both his favorite and his scapegoat. And it was slowly destroying me. I'd go home after rehearsal and stare at my ceiling, exhausted and aching in ways I didn't have words for. I told myself I should talk to someone, a friend, a therapist. But every time I picked up my phone, I couldn't find the right combination of words that wouldn't make me sound like a cliché. Because how do you explain to someone that the person you crave is also the person making you feel small? Julian and I didn't speak outside of rehearsal. No texts, no late-night glances, nothing. It was like that night never happened. Except it did. I could still feel it in the pit of my stomach. I started messing up scenes, dropping lines I knew by heart, missing cues. I wasn't eating right. My sleep was trash. The cast tried. I wanted him to either admit it meant something, or tell me flat out that it didn't. Instead, he gave me direction and silence. 2 nights before opening, we had a late tech run. The warehouse was freezing, the lights half working, the whole thing a mess of missed sound cues and raw nerves. Afterward, I lingered behind, hoping to catch him alone. Maybe talk, maybe fight. I didn't know. He was stacking some programs near the prop table when I approached. "Julian," I said. He didn't look up. "We open in 2 days. Focus on that." "No." My voice was shaking. "We need to talk." "About what?" He finally looked at me. His face was blank. Too blank. "You know what? That night? It was a mistake." His words sliced through me. "It shouldn't have happened. I shouldn't have let it happen." "Let it?" I laughed bitterly. "You make it sound like I begged." He stood straighter, crossing his arms. "This isn't about blame. It was inappropriate. I'm your director." "Right," I said. "And I'm just some actor who got caught up in the wrong fantasy." He didn't reply. I stepped closer. "You don't get to erase it. You don't get to pretend it didn't matter just because it's inconvenient for you." "I'm not pretending," he said quietly. "It didn't matter. Not the way you want it to." That landed like a punch to the ribs. I opened my mouth, then closed it. There was nothing left to say. I turned and walked out, not looking back. I made it to the alley behind the building before the tears came. They weren't loud, just this steady stream of hot, bitter disappointment. I leaned against the cold brick wall, cigarette shaking in my hand, trying to breathe through the embarrassment, the heartache, the fury. It wasn't just about him. It was about what I'd let myself hope for, about how badly I still craved someone to see me, really see me, and choose me, and how much it hurt when they didn't. Opening night came. The warehouse was packed. The crowd buzzed with that electric mix of expectation and caffeine, the kind of energy that can either lift you like a wave or drown you beneath it. I sat in the green room, palms sweaty, heart hammering against my ribs. My reflection in the cracked mirror looked like a ghost, too pale, too hollow. I could still feel the weight of Julian's words. It didn't matter. I told myself to focus, to breathe, to get through the show. But the moment I stepped onto that stage, everything else faded. The lights blinded me. The lines found their way back to my mouth like old friends. My body remembered what my heart was trying to forget. And something unexpected happened. Something almost spiritual. I became Will, the broken brother, the restless soul, the man who clings to people who hurt him because he doesn't know how to ask for more. Every moment rang louder, heavier, truer. When I delivered the monologue in Act 2, the one about falling in love with someone who only saw you when it suited them, the words didn't feel like lines anymore. They felt like confessions. And when I finished, I looked up and saw Julian standing in the back of the house. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were glassy. That's all I had. The show ended to a standing ovation. The cast was beaming, hugging, whispering congratulations. I let them. I smiled. I thanked them. I bowed. But I was only half there. Julian disappeared before I could speak to him. Of course he did. The cast went out for drinks. I went home. I stripped off my costume, showered until the water ran cold, and collapsed into bed with a weight pressing into my spine like something unsaid. I wanted to call someone, tell them everything, but I didn't want to be the guy who slept with his boss and caught feelings. That guy's pathetic. That guy loses. I didn't want to lose. The run continued for 3 weeks. Sold-out houses, rave reviews in the local scene blogs. My name mentioned for the first time, not as a background player, but as something more, something real. Julian never reached out. He kept his distance in rehearsals, in green room chats, in post-show drinks. Sometimes I caught him watching me from across the room, but he always turned away before I could read him. It wasn't just rejection, it was erasure. He didn't just break my heart, he pretended it never existed, and that was worse than anything he could have said. After the final performance, we struck the set. The warehouse emptied slowly. the ghosts of the play lingering in corners where light never reached. I was one of the last to leave, packing up my things in a battered duffel bag. Julian was there, quietly taping shut a box of props. I almost didn't say anything. I almost walked away. But something in me, some part I hadn't fully killed yet, needed to look him in the eye. "Hey," I said. He looked up. "Hey." I just wanted to say, "Thanks. For the role, for believing in me." He nodded. "You earned it." That should have been enough, but it wasn't. "So that's it?" I asked. "We just go back to pretending?" His mouth opened slightly, then closed. "It's not about pretending, Adrian." "Then what is it about?" "It's about damage control." His voice was low, tight. I crossed a line. I shouldn't have. It doesn't matter how I feel. I'm the director. I hold the power. If anyone found out, no one would have cared, I snapped. They'd have gossiped, sure, but the only thing anyone really noticed was how hard I worked. He stepped closer. "You think I don't notice that? You think it didn't tear me up inside to keep my distance? But if I didn't, if I gave—" "Of course it did." The words hung between us like lightning. Then he looked away, jaw clenched. "But that doesn't make it right." And just like that, I knew. He cared. Maybe even more than I did. But he was scared of the power dynamic, of the potential fallout, of himself. Fear is a hell of a prison. I stepped back. "I hope one day you realize that protecting yourself isn't the same thing as being kind," I said. "Sometimes silence hurts more than any mistake." He didn't follow me when I left. The air outside was thick with the smell of dust and endings. That night I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just let go. And in letting go, something strange happened. I felt free. Not because it didn't hurt. God, it hurt. But because I finally understood. Loving someone doesn't obligate them to love you back. And that doesn't make your love any less real, or any less worthy. It just means it's yours to carry, or to leave behind. A few weeks passed. The show faded from the local buzz. My name stopped popping up in reviews and newsletters. The spotlight moved on, as it always does, and I returned to bartending at the rooftop lounge, shaking martinis for bored tech bros and emotionally vacant couples. But something had changed in me. It wasn't just about the show or Julian. It was deeper, like I had been cracked open in some quiet, irreversible way. I wasn't naive anymore, not about love, not about myself, and definitely not about the kind of people I gave power to. I started writing again. Scenes, fragments, monologues that bled like confessionals. I didn't write about Julian, not directly, but his fingerprints were everywhere. In the way characters hesitated, in how they touched each other without touching at all, in the aching pauses between words. One night after my shift, I checked my email. There was a message from Julian. No subject line, just, "You were incredible. I should have told you sooner." I stared at it for a long time. No apology, no explanation, just those two sentences. I didn't respond, not out of spite, but because I'd already said everything I needed to. Because closure, I realized, doesn't come from the other person. It comes when you stop expecting them to fix the story they broke. But still, I kept the email. It stayed there, quietly unread, like a photograph you don't throw away, but also don't frame. Months went by. I landed another role, a small indie film shot upstate. The director was young, thoughtful, and kind in the way that didn't feel like a performance. We stayed in a cheap motel near the woods, drinking cheap wine and talking about art and grief and the weird loneliness of being watched for a living. One night, after a long shoot, he asked if I wanted to go swimming in the lake. It was cold, stupidly cold, but I said it wasn't love. Not yet. But it wasn't pain either, and that felt like enough. One afternoon, while waiting for a lighting setup, I told him the story about Julian. I didn't use his name. I didn't dramatize it. I just told the truth, plain and bare. When I finished, the director was quiet for a while. Then he said, "That sucks." "Yeah," I said, smiling a little. "It did. But also," he added, "you survived it. That means something." He was right. I had survived. More than that, I had learned. I learned that charisma doesn't equal care, that chemistry isn't commitment, that just because someone breaks you open doesn't mean they know how to hold what spills out. And I learned that intimacy without safety is just another form of cruelty. Looking back, I don't hate Julian. I understand him, maybe too well. He was brilliant, afraid, and incapable of giving what he most needed. A mirror, really. One I had to break to finally see myself clearly. I still think about him sometimes. Not in the bitter way, not anymore. More like you think about a storm after it's passed. The shape of it, the damage it left, the silence that follows. Sometimes I wonder if he ever looks back. If he remembers that night, the cigarette he didn't smoke, the way our knees touched under a sky too drunk to care. Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. But that's not my story anymore. This one is. And it's still being written, with every audition I walk into, with every scene I sink into, with every person I let close, because now I know something I didn't before. I deserve to be chosen, not in secret, not in shame, but in daylight, in honesty, in the kind of love that doesn't make you question if you matter when the lights go out. It's been a year. I moved cities twice, took a job teaching intro-level acting at a community arts center. It's not glamorous, it doesn't pay much, but it's honest, and for the first time in a long time, I feel grounded. My students are wild and bright-eyed, still unjaded. They think theater is sacred. I used to think that was naive. Now I think it's brave. One of my students, Liam, reminds me of myself. Not the hardened version, the soft one. The one who used to believe that every glance could be love, if you just leaned into it hard enough. He asked me the other day if I ever made it. I laughed. Define made it. You know, he said, were you ever in something big? I thought about it. About that play, about Julian, about the ovation, the monologue that almost made me cry in front of 200 strangers. I was in something real, I said. He smiled like he understood, and maybe he did. Some nights I walk past the old theaters, those black box spaces where everything smelled like. Not out of fear, I just wait differently now. I listen more. I don't rush to fill silence. I pay attention to what my body feels around someone. Safe, small, lit up, shrinking. Julian taught me that. Or rather, what I went through with him did. That kind of lesson doesn't come easy. One night, at a small industry mixer, I saw him again. It had been almost 2 years. He looked the same. Maybe a little older, a little softer. His hair was shorter. He had a line of grey at his temples that made him look more like a novelist than a director. We locked eyes across the room. It felt like the moment before a cue, like the silence before a storm. He came over. "Adrian," he said. "Julian." A beat. We were surrounded by laughter, music, clinking glasses, but it felt like we were in a soundproof bubble. "You look well," he said. "You too." Another beat. "I saw your indie film," he added. "The one with the lake." "Oh? You were raw, beautiful." My throat tightened. "Thanks." He looked down, then back up at me. "I wanted to say sorry, properly." I tilted my head. "Why now?" "I thought I was protecting us," he said. "Back then, but really, I was protecting myself. You deserved better than what I gave you, than how I made you feel afterward." It was strange. I'd spent so long craving those words. But now that they were here, they didn't land the way I expected. They didn't spark anything. Not rage, not forgiveness. Just clarity. "It's okay," I said gently. "You taught me a lot." He looked surprised. "I don't mean that sarcastically," I added. "You were my first heartbreak. That matters. It always will. But I'm not holding on to it anymore." He nodded. "I'm glad." We stood there for a moment longer. Then he said, "Take care, Adrian. You too, Julian." And just like that, he was gone. No dramatic goodbye, no lingering glances, just two men who had once collided in the dark, now walking separate paths under the same city lights. I stepped outside into the cool night. My phone buzzed. A message from someone I'd met a few weeks ago. Kind eyes, a slow laugh. He'd offered to walk me home once and I'd let him. We'd kissed on my stoop. No fireworks, just warmth, like a stove turned low on a cold morning. Still on for dinner tomorrow? I smiled. Typed back, wouldn't miss it. And in that moment, under the buzz of neon and streetlight haze, I felt something settle. Peace, maybe. Or pride. Or just the quiet knowing that I had survived something sacred and terrible. That I had loved someone who couldn't love me back, and still, somehow, I kept my heart open. Still soft. Still beating. Still ready.